Well, with us today on the program, author of a book that was quite different, something unlike anything I've ever read before, talking about this. This is Flatscreen, and the author of the novel, Adam Wilson, is with us. First of all, my namesake. I'm sure you were pestered just like I was back in the day.
Pestered how?
Where's Eve? Didn't you get tired of that?
Yeah, I got a lot of that. I once went to Jamaica, and every single person I met asked me where Eve was.
That must have been Kingston, or was it Montego Bay?
I was Kingston, actually. I was in Kingston.
Exactly. It's very different. Montego Bay, they don't do that kind of stuff. Hey, Adam, man, I really enjoyed your book. And I'll tell you, just from the minute I cracked it, the minute I started reading it, it hit me almost like it's like the written version of what the Sex Pistols were when I heard them for the first time. The word just went like, whoa, hold on a second. What is this? What is it? How is this guy writing? Very unique style.
Thanks. I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever.
I like what do people say? I mean, I'm reading all the things. People say it's hilarious. They loved it. So
yep, no one's compared it to the Sex Pistols.
Well, really, because the first time you start reading this, is like, oh man, this is like, it's almost like when I first heard "Never Mind the Bollocks," it was like, what is this sound? What is all this stuff? And then you start to, oh, wait a minute, I can hear kind of these things, and now I can understand the lyrics, and that's kind of what I mean. That's the analogy for me.
Sure. Well, I definitely, that was something I was going for. I definitely wanted it to be fast. That felt really important, and to kind of just, I think as many reviewers have pointed out, not a lot happens in the novel. It's sort of minimal when it comes to plot. So. In order to feel like it had some motion, I wanted the language itself to feel really kind of alive, even if the character's life is sort of quite dead.
Well, you certainly succeeded in that, and I thought I liked it. I mean, the plot was very, it's kind of coming of age, if you will, but also a story of our generation. I read this, I'm like, maybe I should take this, put it in a metal box, bury it in the backyard, and then 100 years from now, some guy's gonna dig it up and go, wow, these people were fucked, man. What was going on with their lives?
Yeah.
So, now, a lot of this must have come from, not necessarily what happens to our protagonist here, Eli Schwartz, but a lot of the references to movies and particularly cable, Cinemax type stuff. This is all coming from your own life. There's no two ways about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one thing I was sort of initially really interested in when I started writing the book was the idea that you could have this character who's seen a million movies and watched a lot of TV and been on the internet, and even though he kind of was a terrible student or never went to college, he knows a lot. He's an incredible amount of access to information, which I think is this kind of very contemporary thing, that we have all this information available in front of us, and yet we also, it's not quite, you can learn a lot about all sorts of things, but I think he doesn't, have any understanding of human relationships at all. His models all come from like, sitcoms and rom-coms and other types of coms, and blogs and so he, one thing I was interested in was sort of saying, well, you could actually, turn out pretty smart if you just watch a lot of TV and spend time on the internet, but you're fucked up in all these other ways. So that's,
Yeah, no, totally. And there's all kinds of interesting characters that weave in and out of his life, particularly this Khan character, who to me was kind of like a washed-up Larry Flint idea, right down to the kind of the wheelchair and the obsession.
I never thought of that, but that actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh no, it was totally, the guns, the wheelchair, the sex, the drugs, just no money. That was right. Larry Flint without the dough. But it really it's so interesting because I think what you're saying I agree with, that there's so much life in this, yet zero political awareness, zero knowledge of what's going on basically outside of this town that he lives in, and this little these couple of friends and his local drug dealer and the girls and a couple of things. I got a 21-year-old daughter, man. I mean, I'm going to guess you're about 10 years younger than I am, probably in your 30s. But this is so much like kids today. I mean, you nailed it.
Yeah. Well, good.
It's a sad fucking story is what it is.
That was one of the tough things was, writing. I knew I wanted the character to be a little, somewhat younger than I am, and, of a slightly later generation than me. And I felt like, it was tough. Some of the references I had younger people read, and they were like, yeah, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't get this reference. Or
right.
One of the final things I remember I had to change was there's a whole thing. Capturing the time period was kind of hard because there was like a thing where the mother has a Snuggie, but apparently the book's set in 2006 and the Snuggie didn't come out until like 2008.
It's Slinky in the book, right?
Yeah, so I had to change it to Slank It.
That's what it is. Yeah, Slank It.
The original product.
Right.
I guess that was tough mainly because I'm a very lazy researcher. So I just sort of stuck things in and waited for other people to tell me whether it was correct for the timeline or not.
No, it was good. So this is your first novel. I know you've been writing a lot. You're the editor still of Faster Times, I believe.
I'm actually I'm on sort of a hiatus from there at the moment. Trying to work on a new book and doing some teaching. But I was the editor of the Faster Times for a while.
Because I'd never heard of Faster Times. I looked at the website. And it's kind of interesting. It's like it's not really a news site, although it has a lot of articles related to news, but it's not updated with the frequency that you'd expect kind of from a news site. Where did that come from? What was your involvement in that?
A friend of mine started it, and I was sort of the first person to hop on board. But I think it came from a couple different things. One was that, I think both of us knew a lot of writers, a lot of really good writers who, weren't getting published enough in various types, in glossy print magazines that are still kind of ubiquitous, even as everyone says they're dying, and that still are sort of the way journalists can make a living by writing for them. But we thought we knew a lot of writers who weren't ever going to get published in the New Yorker or other places that still had this kind of old guard mentality. And especially in Brooklyn, there's a lot of writers, and so we sort of were like, well, we should start something. And we had this idea at the beginning that it would be sort of, people were still trying to figure out how people were going to make money from journalism on the internet, and it's still a very complicated question. And we saw the Huff Post and didn't like the fact that they didn't pay their writers. It seemed like a cop-out and unfair. And so we had this idea that it would be kind of a collective where each writer gets paid based on the ad revenue that their articles generate. And this was this, original business model, which we thought at least, if no one was even making that much money, at least it seemed somehow fair.
And did anyone make any money at all on that?
Yeah, a lot of people made a very small amount of money.
Right. And that's the internet for you.
Was what happened.
Oh, I see you've got your cat here joining us.
Yeah,
there you go. So how did you land the book deal?
The hard part, I think it took me a while to get an agent, and then when I did, it was pretty fast selling. I got rejected from a lot of agents, many of whom seemed to think that the book was either too vulgar or that the character was too unlikable. And then I found a really cool agent who pretty much only represents books about sex and drugs, and kind of she's kind of this like badass punk rock chick, and she thought it would be hard to sell, but she was into it. So
and did it take a long time? Did it take a long time to get a publisher?
Once she sent it out, it was like a couple weeks.
Wow, that's great.
I think there was an editor at Harper Perennial who I had been admiring for a while, and seemed to be editing a lot of books by young writers that were sort of edgy, and so he was one of the first people we sent to, and he was the one who ended up buying it, and it was really just a perfect match. I couldn't have been happier with it.
Well, again, I really like the style. You know, it's tiring to get into it. Actually, I haven't done this often, but I wanted to read a piece, because this, to me, this was like, this really just, it'll give people an idea. Let me see, hold on, old age here. Thought about dry-aged steaks, fresh-mowed grass, hip bones, indoor-grown butternut, honeycomb, THC, MDMA, LSD, SATs, SAT2s, TV, LCD, DVD, T2, TI-83, Shave Gruyere, Shave Bush, Harry Bush, Bush Light, Bud Light, heavy metal, hardcore, hip-hop, new wave, no wave, post-punk, post-coital cuddling, J-Lo, J-Date, sweet potato fries, mom hands, function of the internet, size of my penis, coffins, O.J. Simpson, body fat percentage, Brando at the end, Biggie dead, Tupac dead, Cobain dead, Courtney Love still alive. It just goes on like that. It's like, wow, I mean, this is like, it's hitting all the buttons. It's really good.
Thanks. Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts to write, I think, actually. It was...
So besides all the, you know, there's just tons of cultural references, as you know, particularly from, you know, the television, but movies on television, all types of, as you said, comedies, romantic comedies. But also, the book is also part kind of cookbook, in a weird kind of way.
This is true, yeah.
Which I don't know if I could make the, for Mrs. Sachs, the hard body, soft heart recipe, which includes wasabi, 1 bottle of Tabasco, arugula, aged balsamic vinegar, magnum condom, sexually competent man-child, etc., etc. But also, you've got like 17 different endings that you're proposing to this story as kind of narrated by our character here. Interesting. How did you come up with that?
Well, I think in part, you know, that's sort of, I think in part that came out of my own struggle to figure out how I wanted to end the book. Because one thing I knew I didn't want was it to end in a way that a million coming-of-age stories have already ended. You know, I think there's this very common scene, which the narrator kind of pokes fun at in the book, where the story ends with the guy driving off into sunset as the perfect song plays on his car radio. And right. I always thought that felt like kind of a cop-out, that somehow, you know, by doing that, that it's a lie, because what happens? Does anyone really do that? You drive away, and then, you know, it doesn't seem to solve any problems. I actually, you know, have tried that ending in my own life, and it didn't work. At one point, I packed up my car and drove and moved to Austin, Texas. And
Dude, it's where I am right now. I'm in Austin.
There you go. But then I got there and realized I didn't know anyone or have a job or anything, and I was still sort of equally miserable. But you know, I think that was sort of, you know, I wanted to kind of work out those different endings in my own struggle to kind of avoid them. And then I think that in some ways matched the character's struggle in the book, which is that, you know, he's sort of seen he's received all these cultural narratives from television and movies, and he wants to, you know, he wants to change his life, but the only kind of things he can think of are things he's already seen in movies. His imagination's been compromised. And, you know, he has all these kind of ideas and you know, these narratives, but he knows they're all either cliches or totally unrealistic, or he doesn't even know if maybe life now is just an imitation of those things, and he's trying to figure that out. And so he imagines all these endings that he's seen in movies or that he's seen in TV shows. But then the book continues after each one, and I felt like that's the character sort of saying, well, but, you know, this wasn't an ending because there are no endings, and I have to, you know, keep on living my life, and more things keep happening.
And people need to read the book to see how that exactly ends, and, you know, there are some interesting changes at the end which take place. Adam, again, this is great. How's the book doing? Do you have any idea?
My editor says it's doing well, which means he's either lying or telling the truth. I don't know. But it seems to be doing okay on Amazon rankings, which I check all the time.
Yeah, daily refresh. Yeah, how are we doing?
And I've seen it in airports, which is cool.
Excellent.
But yeah, no, it seems to be doing well. It's gotten some good reviews, and I don't know. I came in having very little expectation, sort of just expecting to fail, it to fail miserably. So
it can only,
nice
can only be uphill, is what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, and you mentioned at the beginning that you're working on your next book.
Yeah, I'm working on a new novel. It's both totally different and exactly the same, maybe. You know, I think, you know, I'm trying to write something totally different, but my same obsessions, particularly the ones about sort of modern culture and the way we interact with the media, are still very much present. But the new novel it takes place during the 2008 Wall Street crash, and it's about this guy who has lost his banking job and now thinks he's going to write a nonfiction book about Eminem's The Marshall Mathers LP, which he thinks may be the most important cultural artistic work of his time.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I love it.
So we'll see. And part of it is narrated by the basketball player Dirk Nowitzki, as it stands now.
Really? Okay.
Although we'll see if that stays in.
That's good, man. Well, I look forward to it. You're a very exciting writer. As I said, you know, nothing quite like it that I've ever read. Enjoyed it wholly. It is Flatscreen. Adam Wilson is the author. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you, Kat, for not, you know, completely attacking you during the entire interview. And
yeah, I will. I'll tell her.
Good. I'm sure she'll listen. When the next book comes out, if you got time, I'd love to have you back on.
Sounds wonderful.
All right. Thanks again.
Take care. Thank you.